Okay, hi everyone, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Should we start now because there was a short break mentioned before?
Je comprends toutes ces théories-là. Il est arrivé avec nous. Il y a un retour sur le secret. La dernière réunion, il y a quand même, il y avait des mois. Voilà, on a trouvé des accords, c'est toujours possible. Et si justement la vérité,
Okay, we should wait for 2 minutes and we start.
Moi aussi, je fais comme ça. Je regarde. J'ai pas regardé. On va dire que largement jusqu'à l'ordinateur. Largement jusqu'à
Okay, hi everyone. Good to see you all. Some of you had a chance to discuss yesterday during the warm-up sessions, the improvisation sessions. My name is Saimir Kristo. Sorry, can we now voice from there? David, maybe it's your microphone. Not sure.
What, sorry?
I think your microphone is on and we can hear noises around you. Can you please mute?
Oh, okay. Yes.
Okay. Super. So my name is Saimir Kristo. I'm an architect and professor at Polish University. I'm also the vice dean here of the Faculty of Architecture and Design, and Polish University is a member of Future Architecture Platform since 2015. I think a founding member. Together with me is my colleague Valerio Perna, one of the curators of Tirana Design Week 2021. This was retrospective. But also, we've been working closely together the last years, not only in curating the Tirana Architecture and Tirana Design Week, but also trying to connect the Future Architecture Platform with what is happening not only in Tirana, but also in Albania and the region generally. I'm really glad to moderate this discussion together with Valerio, but also having Valbona, Willem, and David in the discussion. We'll also have a chance later to see your projects, the videos each of you prepared. But firstly, I would like Valerio to take some time and present what will happen this year in Tirana Design Week 2021, and which can be the common points that some of you, many of you, all of you could find, and which would be the spaces, possibilities to collaborate together during this year. I will just share my screen. Can I share my screen now? Okay. Natasha, can you help me a bit with sharing my screen? Can you give me permission?
Okay, now let's start the screen sharing.
The whole screen better, no?
Yeah, the screen is better. So I think that you see the screen, right? Can you confirm to us that you see the screen? Okay, nice. So thanks, Simon, for giving me the words. My name is Valerio Berna, and I'm a colleague of Saimir, and I'm here at Polis as a professor. I have a PhD in architectural design, and I'm the leader of the Innovation Factory, which is a research unit here at Polis University, and I'm one of the curators for Tirana Design Week 2021. So now briefly, not more than 3 or 5 minutes, I'm going to share with you which is the topic of this year. The topic of this year is health and well-being in the post-pandemic city. So it's actually during our events, Tirana Architecture Week and Tirana Design Week, which is the system of biennale that Polis University developed since 10 years now, we always try to have a topic that could reflect which were the main trends during the precedent years. We had one with the topic of non-normativity, then we had one about inclusivity of design. So, every week is a moment also for us as a university, as designer, as architect, to find new energy, to have a topic that we can reflect also, going on for research. And this year, the post-pandemic city, I think is the topic of this year, because we all know what happened during the last 365 days. We were with Saimir in Ljubljana last year to meet the president pivot selected for Future Architecture Platform, and it was actually our last trip, let's say. It was the last time that we took the plane and we actually moved, to join an international event. So what we want to invite you to do this year with us is to reflect about the post-pandemic city. And Polis University will be the place where you can actually show to us how you imagine the world in the post-pandemic times. And of course, this is something that is possible from Future Architecture and from the European Union. And this is just to give you a little overview about the precedent topic of the event. But what we would like to start this year, is some proposition, to start understanding what will happen next. We are waiting, all of us, to go back to the normality, but what is normality at the moment? Can we think about that we will never go back to the good old days, let's say, but we have to build a new normality? So how the city, how design, how architecture can help us, to imagine a new world. And just to keep
No, I just want to reflect, because it was somehow prophetic that in 2019 we were dealing about the topic of foreseeing uncertainty, design and non-normativity. And then last year, before the pandemic, the topic was science and the city. So it's a bit, I don't know, prophetic, but I would just think of it as a good or bad coincidence.
Let's call it prophetic. Yes. Let's call it prophetic. And yes, we started in 2019 thinking about the problem of non-normativity or uncertainty, starting from a consideration from Albania, from Tirana, and what we see from the windows of Polis University. And last year, we wanted to explore the possibility of sciences. And Simon, we actually shift online to have the 2020 edition of Tirana Architecture Week. So we actually went completely on the science on the science field. And this is what we did last year. So, you know, to give you an overview about what Tirana Architecture Week and Tirana Design Week this year will be. So, you know, this was the agenda, and we actually organized a very heterogeneous program, starting from keynote lecturer, which are the ones that we think can reflect more with us according to the topic of the year. Then we have the workshop, which are, you know, made mainly by people from Future Architecture Platform, from people like you, which are selected creatives. Then we have social events like the Pachagucha Night that Saimir is doing since many years. We have the international conference. So, you know, we try to prepare more or less every single event that can lead us to investigate the main topic of the edition. These are some images. This was the international conference, and the international conference we had many guests, important guests like Peter Eisman, Marcus Novak. Last year we had Farshid Moussavi. So, you know, it seems actually that Tirana is one of the places where there is a lot of vibration and where people are also interested to come, because, you know, it's very close to Europe, but actually it's a place that many people maybe doesn't know. And when they come here, they discover that there is a very vibrant scene in Albania to develop ideas and thinking. Some other images from the conferences. These are some of the keynotes of last year. And I would like to mention also the curator of the Italian pavilion at the Biennale this year, Alessandro Melis, that was the opening event. And, you know, all the people from Future Architecture Platform that did the workshop last year with our students. And these are some photos. There was Sonia from Bosnia last year with us that developed, you know, a topic about apartments. I don't know if you want to speak a little bit more the way that we put together education and research concerning the workshop, Simon.
As you see, these heterogeneously developed topics, which move from lectures, conferences to workshops, public events, and competitions. As an education institution, as a university dealing with architecture, design, urban planning, engineering in Albania, we want to engage what we think is the future of the country. And I think our students dealing with the city sciences, as we want to call them, are a major part and major actors in that. So we want always to invite young creatives such as yourselves that have provocative, energetic and interesting ideas to work with them in different levels. Since our range of programs is quite diverse but also focused, the different creatives we have been invited dealt last year with many topics. Of course, as Valerio said, the idea was to shift due to the circumstances into online, working some of you working with colleagues from our university together in order to bridge the distance, but also with the students online in order to create interesting results. In this case, Sonia is dealing with a series of interviews about the life in the post-communist, let's say, houses. On the other side, Diego and Brad are working with ephemeral monuments of design and art in the city. In this case, Matilde and Luis are working with the perception of a parallel line from that crosses all over the world, and at some point it crosses with Albania. What happens in this situation, and how can different points, different cities that are intersected in the line be connected or not between them? We've been working with a lot with film, architecture and films last year, or we'll be working with architecture and shame, monuments of architecture or actions of shame that we feel the shame present in our mind, in our body. This is the case of the National Theatre that was demolished last year. And of course, we saw also experiments dealt in the physical space. Our intention, having good faith, is to develop all the activities physically, if time and the circumstances permit. If not, we've, let's say, proved that we can also bridge this distance of working virtually. In fact, we're these days in a virtual conference, which still, it's quite interesting in the sense of interaction. But nevertheless, if we manage to find a common ground between each other, we would like to do things in Tirana. As Valerio said, it's a vibrant place and many consider it very, very inspiring. Of course, this is a university, college university, but nevertheless, the city is the place that we're gonna develop everything. And we are very open in the sense of activities as workshops, as lecturers for our conference, our international conference, as public events and video installations, but also as let's say happenings in the city involving and engaging citizens, people passing by, and different age groups around. So these were a few things about Tirana Design Week, which I think are very positive to share with you, in order for you also to have an idea of what is happening in Tirana. Of course, we see our collaboration with Future Architecture Platform, and we see Future Architecture Platform as, let's say, an idea, as a movement, or as an initiative that is very much connected to the idea of the new European Bauhaus. I would like you to think also on how your ideas are connected with this topic, of how can we consider a more sustainable and more creative future for us in different fields. So in this case, the new European Bauhaus is becoming a way of living somehow, a new way of thinking. And after this short introductory phase, I would like to present each one of you in the beginning. I would like to actually present yourselves and your project. And then maybe we can have some time to see one by one your videos, the videos you prepared. And in the end, we can have a short discussion together, concluding with some final remarks. So I would like to ask David Dodelonde. He can present himself, and then he can tell us a few things about your idea. And then we can see together the video of your work, and then we can come back to follow up with some questions. David?
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm David Dotelonde from l'Atelier Senzu. We are an architecture office based in Paris. And we developed the idea of architecture and education. Just very quickly regarding this idea of the new European Bauhaus, I think this future architecture platform is actually a great example of how young people can come up with brilliant ideas regarding very different subjects. But in the other hand, we can also see that there are very, very few execution of these ideas. And in a certain way, this new European Bauhaus can be an opportunity to use Europe as a common experimentation field, or maybe as an open source to use these small experimentations, and hopefully to scale it throughout all Europe. Just very quickly, what is very important for us is how, despite all the crises we're living in, such as the economic crisis, the ecological crisis, and the health one that we are deeply in, how us as architects were still able to produce cultural objects or spaces that can be real answers both to this crisis, but also engage our sensibility and the quality of life. And I think this new Bauhaus movement need to answer all these constraints in order to build a more desirable future.
Okay, thank you, David. Let's see your idea. If I'm not mistaken, you work also with André Marchais.
Marchais, yes, exactly.
I think we can see a bit your idea.
Bonjour, nous sommes David Dotelonde et André Marchais, architectes et cofondateurs de l'Atelier Senzu, agence d'architecture basée à Paris. Nous explorons les nouvelles manières de penser et de faire le projet dans un contexte contemporain en profonde mutation, pour préfigurer un futur qui soit plus désirable à travers un enjeu principal, celui de l'éducation.
En réponse au sujet Landscape of Care, nous avons souhaité présenter les multiples relations qui existent entre architecture et pédagogie et comment elles s'influencent l'une et l'autre. La standardisation de ces espaces pour faciliter sa diffusion auprès du plus grand nombre a condamné la salle de classe à un certain immobilisme. Nous souhaitons démontrer à travers notre projet d'extension scolaire que l'architecture peut avoir un impact sur la manière d'enseigner.
Nos réflexions et recherches portent à la fois sur l'histoire de l'architecture scolaire, comprendre les mécanismes d'évolution, mais aussi sur le développement des pédagogies actives qui proposent d'autres usages et donc une remise en question de ce même espace. La salle de classe est organisée et matérialisée au XIXe siècle selon les pédagogies issues de l'école mutuelle et confessionnelle. Elle a ensuite évolué au XXe siècle sous l'influence des politiques hygiénistes et économiques afin d'en créer un standard pour le plus grand nombre. Cette évolution s'est soudainement interrompue à la moitié du XXe siècle alors que les pédagogies, elles, ont continué d'évoluer.
À travers notre projet d'extension scolaire, nous avons souhaité questionner l'archétype de la salle de classe, resté sensiblement le même depuis presque 2 siècles. La construction d'un espace circulaire permet, à l'inverse d'une salle rectangulaire, d'offrir un lieu tourné vers le collectif où il n'y a pas de premier rang ni de dernier. Nous espérons pouvoir, à travers cette expérience, démontrer que l'architecture puisse influencer les pratiques d'enseignement.
Nous pensons sincèrement que les architectes doivent investir le cadre de l'éducation et que l'architecte doit à la fois engager sa responsabilité et sa créativité dans la conception de nouveaux espaces plus adaptés, pouvant apporter au monde de l'enseignement de nouveaux outils pédagogiques.
Pour cela, nous, architectes, nous devons avoir le courage d'imaginer une utopie et de la penser suffisamment fort pour qu'elle finisse par se réaliser. Prendre soin des enfants est un objectif majeur pour s'assurer de la création d'un futur propice, positif et collectif. Ce seront les adultes de demain et l'enseignement est le meilleur matériau pour bâtir un futur désirable.
Bonjour, nous sommes David Notland.
Okay, we're back. Actually, the topic that you are dealing in your project is quite interesting also for us because we work in a university and we see every day the challenges of that. You mentioned actually with your colleague on how you came up with the idea somehow, but can you tell us very shortly a few things about that and how do you see the impact of your idea, either in a positive or maybe not in a negative, but maybe in an alternative way? And how does your idea affect also the way you work yourself?
Well, actually, I don't know if it's because me and my partner were actually terrible students at school or if it's because we became young parents, but we've been working on a few school competition and we started to be actually fascinated by the fact that all around the globe, school looks nearly the same and with the same classroom, the same corridor. So we thought that this issue was actually both European and international. And I think, I don't know if it changed the way we work because we always try to have the same attitude to be very critical towards each project we're working on. We are interested in using standards and constraints as actually an opportunity to invent or to create or to go beyond what already exists. And this approach we have, starting with always like big analysis, feels almost like a journalist work. We try to avoid cliche and to bring on the table a very objective and documented vision. In terms of impact, I hope to tell you soon how the teachers and the kids are evolving in the space we created. This is actually the small model that you can see in the video because the construction is about to start now, and the pavilion will be ready for September. And the French ministry actually seems to be very interested in this project, so we'll see if it's scalable or not.
Do you see your ideas maybe a new shift in the way we design architectural spaces? And maybe if this is a new shift, your methodology, is it in the risk of becoming the standard, the new standard?
That's a good question. I think creativity and the new type of spaces that we are creating should be the new standards. Actually, the diversity and experimentation should be the new standards, more than just one answer.
I very much agree. We're in a situation that ourselves, every day we are even working and teaching with students. We understand that teaching a class this year is not the same teaching a class next year. Now the generation gap is smaller in time, but bigger in conceptual feeling. Okay, I think we can go through to the next idea and then we can come back again. Willem Hubrechts, right? I pronounced right your name? Willem?
Hubrechts, but it's okay.
Okay, sorry about that. Maybe you can tell us a few things about yourself and then, of course, some things about the idea. And then we can see the short video.
Yeah. So actually the project I will present is part of my thesis project I did 2 years ago. And now I graduated, so I'm happy now. But we went to Peru for 3 months, and we did some research on the city of Ayacucho, which is like a city high up in the Andean mountain range, and they have big troubles in water shortage. So actually, the idea was that we could go there and try to find or give solutions on how water is actually instead of getting more water to the city, making the city more water resilient. But I will explain it in the video, so maybe.
Okay, let's see the video then.
Yeah.
There's no sound.
Mijn naam is Willem, ik ben sinds 2 jaar afgestudeerd als architect en ik woon en werk hier in Brussel. In 2018 ben ik met een aantal collega-studenten naar Ayacucho in Peru getrokken om onderzoek te doen naar de manier waarop de stad Ayacucho minder waterafhankelijk kan worden en hoe circulaire waterinfrastructuur eigenlijk deel kan worden van het stedelijk weefsel en van het publieke landschap. En op die manier een gedeelde cultuur rond water kan doen ontstaan.
De stad Ayacucho is gelegen in de Andes op meer dan 2000 meter boven het zeeniveau. Net als vele andere steden in de Andes kent ze een enorme bevolkingsgroei. Deze bevolkingstoename zorgt ervoor dat er een enorme druk gelegd wordt op de watervoorziening van de stad en het omliggende landschap. Dat heeft niet alleen een impact op het natuurlijke ecosysteem, maar zorgt ook voor sociale en economische ongelijkheid. De stedelijke groei gaat dus ten koste van de omliggende boeren en lokale gemeenschappen die hun watervoorziening willen uithogen. De vraag is dus niet hoe de stad zijn watertoevoer per se kan vergroten, maar vooral hoe ze haar waterverbruik kan inperken door in te zetten op opslaan en hergebruiken van regen- en afvalwater. Om die vraag te beantwoorden focussen we op de rand van de stad, op de periferie, waar de blueprint van de toekomstige stad getekend wordt door zelf georganiseerde nederzettingen die hun eigen wegen en infrastructuur aanleggen. Wij stellen voor om zo vroeg mogelijk in te zetten op slimme, maar low-tech circulaire waterinfrastructuur die ingebed wordt in het stedelijke weefsel, zodat ze mee kunnen consolideren met de rest van de stad. Maar de vraag is complexer dan dit alleen. Hoe moeten wij als ontwerpers, als ruimtelijke denkers, die vaak denken vanuit een theoretisch denkkader, ons gedragen in een context waar de act of designing helemaal niet bestaat zoals wij die kennen? Mensen doen beroep op lokale bouwmethodes en sociale structuren van samenwerking en wederkerigheid. En die structuren zijn gebaseerd op eeuwenoude principes die diep geworteld zijn in de cultuur van de Andes. We keren de vraag dus om. Hoe kunnen wij als buitenstaander leren van die bestaande gebruiken en technieken die in de geschiedenis trouwens hun nut bewezen hebben? En hoe kunnen we die proberen te vertalen naar een stedelijke context? Laat ons zeggen, de architect als vertaler. en die vertaalt landelijke inheemse technieken van waterbeheer naar de context van de hedendaagse stad. Met deze architect-vertaler benadering in gedachten heb ik dus 3 strategieën ontwikkeld. Ik neem de wijk Mooie Patta, ten noorden van de stad, op een droge plateau, als case study. De eerste strategie focust op de restruimtes. En die zijn typisch voor de wijk Mooie Patta, die georganiseerd is volgens een hybride systeem van 2 orthogonale grids van straten die licht geroteerd zijn ten opzichte van elkaar, waardoor er restruimtes ontstaan, die verspreid zijn over de wijk en heel moeilijk te ontwikkelen zijn. Maar daardoor zijn ze wel de ideale plek voor collectieve waterinfrastructuur om huishoudelijk afvalwater te filteren, op te slaan en uiteindelijk te hergebruiken. Maar tegelijkertijd ontstaan er ook zo interessante collectieve groenruimtes, die trouwens heel zeldzaam zijn op het droge plateau van Mooie Patta. En dat zijn eigenlijk gedeelde plekken op de schaal van de gemeenschap. Waar de eerste strategie focust op de fluïde tussenruimte, werkt de tweede strategie op de publieke ruimte. Een centrale, off-the-grid markthal recycleert niet alleen zijn eigen afvalwater, maar doet ook dienst als regenwaterbuffer op schaal van de hele wijk. Ze capteert het regenwater in het natte seizoen in overvloed de straat naar beneden stroomt en slaagt het water op voor het droge seizoen. Een derde strategie focust op private initiatieven, die de slechte bodemsamenstelling van de Mooie Patta-plateau kunnen verrijken door ruimte te maken voor een composteringscyclus, die het mogelijk maakt om nieuwe vegetatie te doen groeien en daardoor ook de waterbufferende capaciteit van de bodem doet toenemen. Deze 3 strategieën kunnen samengebracht worden in een netwerk van projecten die ingebed zijn in het stedelijke weefsel en letterlijk ruimte bieden voor een gedeelde cultuur rond water. Hallo, mijn naam is Willem.
It seems I'm not very good with the playback of the videos right now. Anyway, I think the idea was very interesting in the way you try to address a new circular system around the existing one. You know, I saw it much more as I would not say exactly superimposition of 2 systems, but maybe a superimposition and reintegration of those 2.
Mm-hmm.
How did you come up with the idea? What about that?
Yeah, actually, it sort of started to grow while we were there, because in the beginning we were really making maps of the city, trying to understand how it worked topographically, trying to understand like the hydraulic system of the city and like how the politics of land appropriation work and stuff, very technical things. But then a certain moment we visited like a village outside the city, and we realized that there is a very, very interesting culture around water in this area, because historically they've always been using this water and very dependent on that water. So actually, these are the same people that immigrate to the city and live in these outskirts of the city. So we realized also when we started talking to these city dwellers that actually they have a lot of knowledge, but they just don't realize or don't manage to translate that knowledge to an urban condition. So that's actually, we just collected all of that information, went to like hundreds of people, and then we just had to connect the dots and try to find spaces where we could make that translation. So actually it grew when we were there. And we also, in the end, we presented it to these people and we tried really to use the same vocabulary that they use, because they also have like, most of the people speak Spanish, but there is also like the Quechua language, the indigenous language that they use. And they use a lot of words that are connected to water. They have like dozens of different words for water, for example. So it's very interesting to really relate this infrastructure to a culture around water.
I'm just curious, as you said, it was a way of understanding of the way of living there, and then you came up with the idea. But did you had some kind of a past experience with this kind of methodology? Maybe you used it in a previous work you did, or it was just there made there for there? You know what I mean?
You mean the technical part or the more anthropological?
I think that both technical and anthropological, because I think the way you worked, as I said, is between two levels, and there are many more sub-levels and sub-layers inside it. So have you worked with this idea, with this logic before?
No, we hadn't done this before. I mean, before all of our, because it's student work, we just did in our own context. It was the first time that we really went out. And I mean, our professors, they helped us a lot in providing literature and interesting practices that had happened there. But yeah, it was the first time actually.
And what about the impact in the community? I mean, did you present it to a partner there? Did you see any reaction?
Yeah, because we made like the writing stuff and drawing the thesis and designing everything. We did it in Belgium, but then we got back there, and we presented it to the local leaders of the communities, like the jefe, they call them, the chief. And it's actually interesting because they were really really interested. But I mean, if you don't really support this project, it's very hard to really get them realized. That's a whole different reality, and unfortunately we could not. Our time there was limited, so we could not really get this project further than that. But hopefully it will be picked up somewhere. Yeah,
I think it will be very important for you to communicate your idea further. I think as part of this platform now, or the future architecture platform, but I think you can go back again, revisit the place and maybe see.
Yeah.
And how do you see it? Because you mentioned that this problem of overpopulation, overgrowth, is evident in most of the cities in the Andes. You know, how do you see your idea implemented? Not only in one city or one village, but as a part of a bigger system. Do you find it possible? Do you see it part of a more systemic approach in that area, or even further?
I think that's, on the one hand, it's really interesting to try to multiply these ideas and try to get it as far reached as possible. But on the other hand, a lot of the things that we proposed there were very local and very contextual. And I think it could be a mistake to try to repeat it everywhere, because, for example, the fact that these streets were like sort of hybrid system of two street grids that crossed each other, it was something that only happened in that neighborhood, and that's why there was this opportunity there. But in another neighborhood, maybe there is like a very steep hill that is not fully constructed or developed. I mean, I believe that it has also the quality of the context that we should really be aware of. But maybe trying to translate the same vocabulary to another context could be interesting, like the shift of translating and not only the design itself as a fixed idea.
I think maybe it will be very much, as you said, maybe more valuable and interesting the value of translating, or just the technical part, because as I understand, your proposal, the social aspect, the aspect of caring, but also the aspect of the technology, the architecture itself, or the design thinking come together. They cannot be perceived detached. So this is what makes it also very interesting. Okay, Willem, thank you a lot for this first part. And going further, I would like to continue with Valbona Feiza, which is part of a bigger group, actually, also with Adelina Feiza, Sania Abramovska, Irina Damianowska, Brankica Dogazak, and yourself, of course. You have the idea Back to Nature, right? And you present Puzzle, I think it's called your collective.
Yes, I'm presenting Puzzle today. We are a collective of young architects and urban designers. You mentioned the names. So our proposal is basically done for a competition in 2019, more precisely Chicken Chic Residential Design Competition, which we're asking the contestants to imagine the living in the future.
Okay, so let's go through and watch all together the video.
Hi, we are Puzzle, a collective of young and enthusiastic architects from North Macedonia, launched in 2018. This is the team: Adelina Fazer, Sanja Avramoska, Irene Damianoska, Brankitsa Dogazenska, and Valbona Fazer. We are sharing with you Back to Nature, our proposed idea for a residential design competition, Living in the Future. What will the future look like? How can architects design dwellings to meet evolving living patterns and the challenges of the future? These are the questions asked by the Shinkanchiku competition in 2019, a call to design dwellings that take a bold social and environmentally sustainable view of the future. Living in the future for us represented a task to look at housing in a new manner. As the last century was producing the machines for living and was reinventing the whole concept of living, today we need a new idea that would adapt to the contemporary way of life, a new housing typology. Although we imagine this future will come to be in the next 10 or 20 years, it became reality in only 1 year. The COVID-19 completely changed the social life of people living in the city. 2020 was a turning point for everyone. The current way of life and consumption has become unhealthy for all living beings and destructive for the planet. People are more frequently working from home. Therefore, the working space in the house is envisioned as essential. Consequently, the living room and the working room are reinvented as an open space in the house. They are not just a room anymore, they are a garden, a green oasis where people can spend most of the time in a direct connection with nature. Reinforcing the idea of the immovable villas which had their gardens, the new building will enclose an empty green space that will partially be filled with the rooms which represent the more private spaces. In this way, the house is imagined as a gradation of privacy. The most private spaces are the sleeping rooms and bathrooms, while the spaces for working, resting, sitting are becoming more exposed to the public. We see the future as a new era of sustainability, a new movement. For that purpose, we must remind ourselves of the sustainable ways of life of our ancestors. People should learn how to respect and care for nature and resources by practicing the process of their production. It is time for everybody to produce their energy, recycle the water and the waste they create, produce, and grow the food they eat. In order to accomplish the big change, every household must contribute. On a smaller scale, this means that the new kitchen will include new built-in modules for selected recycling. The process of product processing will now go through a full cycle. Some of the waste will be used to produce food that people will grow in their gardens. Such visions for a sustainable future demand a new way of dwelling, another housing concept that will affect strongly the social aspect of the life of the people and the city of tomorrow. This building typology can be a home for 1, 2, or more families and households. The images show how this typology can be implemented into the classic urban block in the city. The green of the city will not be attached exclusively to the public spaces. It will take over the private plots too. The consequences of such living will also be visible in the city functioning and planning. The machines for living would turn into a green oasis for living and working. Nature should not be a place to visit. It should be our home.
Okay, that was very interesting. So, as you described in the video, was an idea for a competition, right? Can you tell us a few things more?
Yes, it was for a competition, but at the same time, we experienced that because at that time when we were doing the competition, we were working from home and we were overwhelmed with work. So in a way, we experienced the lockdown feeling beforehand. So we knew that this type of dwelling, and the working space will be a must in the home. That's why maybe it reflected in our work also.
It's something that also relates to the, not only to the situation we were all last year, and we are still there, some of us, but it was a direct reflection of your everyday life, of all of us own everyday life. And how do you see firstly the impact of your idea? Because I think I find it very interesting on the total amount of space that the areas we use every day take. In this case, they are somehow shifted. Instead of walls that are occupying space, that space is given to the different activities we do, and the more flexible layout is being given to the housing unit, let's say. But how do you see this idea in the sense of its impact? And maybe you could think of the impact from inside out to the architecture as you firstly started.
Well, the greatest impact will have to the well-being, actually the psychological well-being of people, because the life will become healthier. The physical aspect, it's an idea, it's a concept still, so we can't talk about the physical aspect of this space. We imagine that the kids, that the living room and the working room, as they are the day rooms now in our home, they will be more open to the outside world. And so in a way, even if you are isolated like we are doing it now, you won't feel that loneliness as we do now. So it will have a good impact on your well-being, and it will become healthier, and also it will have a good impact on the planet Earth, if we are seeing that we're going back to nature and we're implementing nature inside our build space.
And as we are talking about well-being, how did your idea affect the way you live or work at the moment?
As I mentioned before, it was basically the idea that we were at the moment when we are doing the project, we felt that we need that openness. It wasn't the COVID time, but now we are aware of that. So now we can see it in our project when we are doing new projects, that we want to make the space healthier and also more open. So even if you isolate, you will have that greatness. We didn't have enough time to implement it or to see how it will work, so we don't know. We will see.
And as you are a very nice collective, we saw, and some of your teammates are also in this room. Maybe there is have you ever envisioned your idea being implemented in a long term? I mean, how would you think it would affect a neighborhood, let's say? Let's not say a city, a neighborhood in the beginning. Do you see it giving also I mean, do you see it as a fixed final product, or you think that are many more things to be experimented inside it?
At the beginning, we were re-examining the machines for living. So we wanted to see what are the good things of that successful housing and what are the bad things. So in a way, we started with that to making it as a project that can be implemented in different places. But now we can see that some of the proposals or a concept, or some of the part of the concept can be seen as a machine for living, an idea that will be a broad idea, but some of it it should be implemented in according to the context. So I don't know how it will affect to one neighborhood, but let's say that it's a new neighborhood, it will definitely be, I will say, in the well-being and also impact on the nature. I don't know if I answered the question that you.
I think you did in your own way, but I mean, now that we all heard a few things about each other's ideas and projects, I think it's very interesting that also this session is called Paradigm Shifts, and we are talking about a paradigm shift in education beyond the non-standard formatting, layouting of how us, our children, and our grandchildren will be taught, will learn, will be educated. We talk about the systemic approaches into infrastructures on feeding, on growing, on nurturing ourselves and the land that Willem very nicely described. And of course, your experimental idea on shifting the paradigm of living and on working, on enjoying, on breathing even. I think we are tackling different aspects of our daily life that with the pandemic or the situation we are now are yet in doubt or in thought. The last days when we were discussing about Tirana Design Week and the idea of the health and well-being in the city, in the post-pandemic city, we're also thinking and discussing about so many aspects of living, even in the sense of educations or professions, sorry, that were totally irrelevant at some point, or they were totally neglected, or they were totally not respected enough. Now are absolutely super important, and they're very in our highlight and focus. And as Valbona maybe was the last to be the part of this record, maybe she could be the first. How do you see the level of your idea in a general interaction with the topic of health and well-being? Of course, I know that this was the initial stage that you started, but how can you see the perspective of our lives changing under this topic? How do you see that?
Well, as I mentioned before, how we see this project implementing in the future and what kind of impact it will have. We definitely we see a relation in your topic into Tirana Design Week and also maybe in the new Bauhaus. But what our idea is more in a concept level, and we don't have the immobile villas of a definite project like Le Corbusier. So we don't know how it will be implemented. Le Corbusier has even a tested model, but we want to engage the audience with this abstract representation to see how they think about this, because we told what we think and how it will impact the well-being, but we want to see how they are experiencing this idea and to engage their imagination and to see how they perceive and interpret it in a physical way, but also in the aspect of scale. Does this idea look like it is a house for one household, or for two, or maybe for 100? So we need to see the audience in order to continue with the project and to see if it can be implemented and if it will affect the well-being of the people.
I think you were right in some point, and maybe I can push a bit further what you said. Maybe I think it's not necessary to see a model like Le Corbusier did, a model of physical testing. Maybe, as you said, inspiring, triggering audiences and other creatives can propose a numerous and unlimited series of layouts and schemes that your concept can be implemented. And as David also would agree, it's not about producing the old traditional standardized models of education, but also creating new alternative ones. So I think this is what your idea is tending, and I think beyond answering to the topic of health and well-being, it's really about landscapes of care. So it responds to the topic of future architecture platform. Okay, we will come back.
It's about creating principles. we like the modernist because it has principles, but it's not a must. We don't need a definite model, but we need a principle to remind ourselves that what is necessary for this community.
Okay, thank you for now. Willem, what is your perspective on this?
Yeah, I agree in a way, but what I think, for example, what I learned in the Peru is actually that they had a very strict social organization, like high up in the mountains. And when they came to the city, they sort of lost that structure. It fell apart, and people just lived in their own plot and in a very closed, like a walled plot, literally. The house is just a wall with a roof. And I think what is also a way of a landscape of care, or how you can see it, is try to provide literal space for this collective collaboration. For example, I mean, in this case, it was the water. So they kind of invest in a collective water infrastructure and connect it to a local water tap and so on. And in that way, they sort of care for themselves, but also for each other. And I think for in a sense, it's also something, Valbona, what you did with the greenery in the house, that is sort of mediating space between the public and the private units. I think like the in-between space is I think a very interesting medium to provide spaces for care, if you understand what I mean.
I think it's part of your systemic also approach that you implemented before. Thanks. And David, what do you think?
I think in all of our proposals, I think what is very common is like how architecture can like architecture as a single discipline can deal with all the crises and all the standards, all the constraints that we have to deal with, and how architecture also as a cultural object or spaces can have an impact on the way we live. And it's not only about giving answers to crises, it's about putting architecture in the center of our experimentation, of our new models, our new schemes. I think at the end of the day, it's like how architecture could be used as a creative domain to offer new tools for either learning spaces or living spaces or social spaces.
It practically affects all the spheres of our living. It's important that all of us, I think, we understand that, but I want to highlight that within the spectrum of landscapes of care, we wanted to exactly emphasize the different spheres on how we will maybe not only think that our profession is successful or architecture is always monumental or majestic, but also the architect itself sometimes fails. Sometimes is not able to do everything. And on this question, we tried also to think how we can also be not only the leading member of a group, but also we can be sensitive about everyone in our group. How can we can be sensitive for our students, for our colleagues, for everything that every one of us are going through right now, and how can we give not only this social element, but how can we exactly create different landscapes of care and try to even highlight them, emphasize them, make them more powerful, create bridges between those landscapes, and emphasize also water systems that could link one another. And maybe we can go back to the first thing we started discussing as David said in the beginning, you said that also future architecture platform, you see it as a representative of what the new Bauhaus wants to develop. How do you see that personally? Because as someone, as a creative that sees it firstly from the outside, what is your perception on that?
As I said, I think there are brilliant ideas in this competition, but I think what matters is executions, because that's what could become a new scheme for all Europe. And I think those experimentations needs to happen, and the new Bauhaus can be a sort of open source for all of us to experiment, even though it's not big project. It could be like very small project like the one we're doing now. And if you can have one small project, like a small circular classroom, for instance, that change the way we learn to kids, I think this scheme can be scalable to other countries. And that's I think the great thing about this new Bauhaus, is an open source of experimentation and new schemes.
Interesting position. I like the concept of this open source system that is always being informed. It's always informing. Is open access and gives a new definition to. We thought for Bauhaus before, because before was just a model that we try to get inspiration from. Now actually with your idea we can be part of. All of us can be part of it, and it can be also part of us somehow.
Exactly, and especially regarding education, which is something that can travel from, I mean, each country has its own regulation, but pedagogies, they can travel. Like for instance, in the 19th century, France education was very inspired from England and Germany, and also Netherlands. So especially regarding education, we have a lot of things to share regarding all the European countries, and I think yeah, that's the main idea, is that we can share a lot of things in the future.
Okay. Anyone else of you? I will not point one or the other, but who wants to continue?
Yeah, I would also I would like to call for also the poetry of the ordinary. Like if I hear the term new Bauhaus, it reminds me of a very modernist approach of dealing big problems with big solutions, and trying to, like in a very product design-ish way of thinking, creating a final product and just repeat it, and it will solve the housing problem. Of course, it had solved some problems, but it also had excesses and extreme things that came from that. And I think maybe we should not say how like the ordinary people, the man in the streets, should live, but maybe we should also ask them how they want to live and try to extract the qualities that they're looking for, and try to link them with the bigger complex problems that are like ahead of us, and try to translate them in a poetry of the ordinary. I don't know. I think there is also some quality in it, not always having the big gestures, but also the smaller moments. Yeah, it's a call.
So for you, is about creating something new, or we should just refer to the old?
No, it's not. I don't want to historicize things or something, but I mean, there is a very rich environment in the context of everything. I mean, wherever you go, there is so much there, and we should not put on a tracing paper or a blank paper, but maybe a tracing paper, and try to work from like what is underneath, instead of creating a whole new reality and going tabula rasa, like they maybe did in the first Bauhaus or the modernist movement.
Anyway, according to René de Graaf, maybe the 20th century was a glitch in the matrix. So
yeah, yeah. But I mean, if I hear the politicians talk and they're talking about like a new style and the new aesthetics of the new bar, I mean, it scares me also a little bit. I mean, I hope, I mean, it will also be, will it provide a lot of money for new experiments and stuff. I believe that, but it's also, yeah, we should be careful.
We should be. Okay, Valbona, what's your opinion about that?
Well, I mostly agree with Willem and also David about this. We hope that the new Bauhaus won't be a new movement as Bauhaus before. So we want to see that the new the modern Bauhaus was mostly a reflection of the discovery of viruses, especially tuberculosis. But we will see if COVID-19 will affect the new Bauhaus, but we hope that it won't end up with that reflection, that they will examine each context and it won't be a movement as Willem said.
Okay. I mean, as you said, the future artificial platform is an idea that personally, when I talk about it, I always think it as a European Union of Architecture. You know, now members of future architecture platform are also countries or institutions from countries that are not part of the EU. You know, so this even extends the notion of it, and for me, it's something beautiful. While I will maybe ask if the public that is following us in the chat has any questions, they can write them in the chat if there are any, and maybe some of you things that we forgot something on. There is some questions from you to us here. Is there any topic that you would like to address further or not?
One of my colleagues will like to ask something. So
yes, I'm trying to unmute Sanya. Sanya, can you write your can you write your question in the chat, and then I will.
It's not a question actually. I wanted to add up on the idea of a new Bauhaus and
yes,
what we envision with our project. So yes, Bauhaus maybe will be a new movement, but we see it as a new way that architects can come together and learn from each other. So at the same time, I think now we are at a time where we should distance ourselves from what we know and what is our society, and see it from a distance and see its flaws and try to rethink it. And that's what we are trying to do with our project, Back to Nature. So we try to see the flaws and we try to see how our ancestors dealt with these things and merge them in a project. So in a way, I think that maybe the new Bauhaus, the idea of a new Bauhaus should be something like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the intervention. Maybe any more questions?
Maybe we would like to ask David about your concept. It is for a classroom, but have you thought how this type of circular room will affect to another typology, or can be applied somewhere else? And also, you are doing with the archetype of the classroom, but have you thought about the impact on the school as a building, how it will be implemented, this circular classroom in the building itself?
So thank you, Valbona, for the question. The main concept about having a circular classroom is not like, it's of course a bit of a formal approach, but the main idea is to have an archetype that is centered towards the collective. Like, we really wanted to do a classroom where you have no front row nor back row. So there is like this 180 degrees classroom where you can see all of the kids learning from the teachers. And I think in a bigger scale, we did not really get into this form, but we developed other strategies such as using outdoor spaces as real learning spaces. We had recently followed scientific reports saying that outdoor learning increased cognitive faculties for the children. And so we recently proposed to the city of Paris to use playgrounds as a space of learning by installing open air pavilion in this playground. So I think education is not only about the classroom archetype, but it's also about shared spaces, playgrounds, rooftops, and also we do believe that maybe there is something to do with renovation, since you can imagine to having one big floor plate instead of having 3 classrooms, so you have one bigger space because you gain the circulation in the usable square meters. So this archetype that we designed was about one site-specific project, but now that we are thinking a bit more about the schools as a bigger scale, I think there are other spaces to think about.
Okay, it was an interesting point of view. So, do you have anything more to add from either the public or ourselves? Okay, I think if we can make a small recap. What I can say that your 3 ideas, but also I find ourselves very much into the same topic, discussion about the paradigm shifts, because we also talked about many times in the past about how we can adapt to new paradigm shifts in education, in architecture, in living, in creating structures and infrastructures, on responding on nature and agriculture, on man-made systems or natural-made systems. But I find very much interesting your topics as not static point of views, as very dynamic point of views that, as David said, could be even open source. Valbona and the puzzle team gave the idea of rethinking the living working space, and maybe then a database of different articulations, different manifestations of ways of living could be explored and produced. Willem and his group gave the idea of creating a new systemic systems of infrastructures, I would call them, and then maybe we can see that how it adapts to the Andes, but how it adapts to Albania or other territorial landscapes. And I think, of course, the topic of education is something that, with your latest answer, also triggers me even more. If can we know the result of something that we haven't even tested? I think this is a risk, a challenge that we are all trying to take together, right? We're trying to think proactively, think provocative or not ideas, and we try to to take a leap of faith with each other, and maybe collaborate or not in the future, and we see how we can implement those ideas.
What we can understand from the implementation to further work on.
I think this is one of the most important things. I think at the point that we're having this dialogue today is one of the most strong points of future education platform. We're trying to link common things. Maybe we will not, I don't know, maybe we will not work today or tomorrow, but we've been working in 6 months, in 1 year. Maybe you will be the first to call, or you will be the first to come to us for something new in the future. I think we need to push further, and I agree a lot to what Sania said in a point before, that maybe we should not take things for granted. We should also wait and see, reflect, and then proactively respond for future ideas. I think I tried to do a short recap of what we discussed before, and I would definitely like to continue this discussion. Why not even physically together at some point in the near or long future? I really hope for that. Fingers crossed. I think I don't want to force more or extend longer discussions that were quite productive in my opinion.
No.
And I think we can go to follow different parallel session rooms if they're still active, and then maybe see each other all at 4 in the common room. But I really, together with Valerio, we feel very honored to moderate this discussion and very happy to share this space with you, even though virtually. And I'd like to thank you a lot for your participation and for applying for Future Architecture Platform. I would like to also thank Natasha for being our co-host coordinator from Mao, and of course all the public and the people that joined and followed the discussion up to now. Thank you guys. See you in the parallel sessions.
See you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Ciao.